Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, we're taking a look at a Pokemon that looks absolutely insanely strong in the Open Ultra League, and that is buffed Tentacruel. Tentacruel's move Scald, not only does it now do more damage, but the attack drop chance to opponents goes from 30% to 50%. Combining this with the fact that some of its hardest counters, Steelix and Sandslash, will be a lot less common due to the prevalence of Talonflame, we're looking at a Pokemon that is absolutely amazing in the Open Ultra League, and there's quite a few teams that you can run with it and have success. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and let's check out buffed Tentacruel in the Ultra League. Picking up an amazing lead in the first match, Tentacruel into Galarian Weezing. The opponent save switches into a Shadow Claw Giratina, which will immediately be answered by Greedent. Greedent did get access to a new move this season, Trailblaze, but for this team and for Ultra League in general, I'm a big believer that you're still going to want to run Crunch, as without Crunch, Greedent can actually lose to Giratina. Giratina gonna spam out the Dragon Claws, but it's not gonna matter, this is such a good matchup for the Greedent. With regards to this team, if you don't have a Guzzlord, there are several things that you can run instead. Can potentially run an Obstagoon as the closer, or even potentially a Greninja. The goal is you just want something that will do very well into Ghost types like Jellicent. Opponent tries to go for a catch into the Weezing, and I can send in the Tentacruel. They're going to be spamming out Brutal Swings, which don't do a lot of damage, and now I get to fire off the Scald. Not only does this do more damage than last season, but it's a 50-50 chance to lower their attack. The coin flip lands, and their attack is debuffed. And now, what was already a bad matchup is made so much worse by the fact that they just can't output any damage. And I'm just gonna get to no shield, poison jab all the way down, and leave with close to 100 energy. Tentacruel is just absolutely oppressive now. Opponent, are they going to send in the Giratina? They do. I'm firing off the Scald here. I don't really want to go for the Blizzard. The Scald won't KO. I'm going to farm up, switch into the Greedent to catch the charge move. I still don't know what they have in the back, but I've stored energy everywhere. In the back, there it is. The new, arguably #1 Pokemon in the Ultra League, Talonflame. Talonflame, with the buff to Incinerate, is incredibly oppressive, but that's why having a core like this, Guzzlord Tentacruel, where you have 2 fire resists on your team, is extremely nice, as you're building a team that is by design extremely strong into Talon. Talon, continuing to farm up, I make it to the Scald. This is going to be forcing the final shield, and again, 50-50 chance at a debuff. This time we don't get the debuff, but honestly we don't need it. They go for the Flame Charge. That still doesn't KO the Tentacruel. Tentacruel is so bulky. Having a bulky Pokemon like Tentacruel, having a move that has a 50% chance to lower the opponent's attack, is absolutely brutal. Opponent gonna send in the Giratina, and Guzzlord has the Dragon Claw waiting for it. Dragon Claw will get the KO, and we take the game. Picking up a slightly negative lead in the next match, Tentacruel into Shadow Ampharos. I throw one Poison Jab, safe switch into Greedent, and my opponent is going to respond with Tapu Fini. Honestly, this is pretty nice. I have a Greedent with a massive energy advantage, and I've managed to bait out the Fairy type that would absolutely crush the Guzzlord in the back. So now, I'm going to do what Greedent does best, and that is the Body Slam spam. I want to try and either guarantee shield advantage or switch, as either one is going to help me in defeating the difficult alignment, that is the Tentacruel going up against the Ampharos. Perfect mechanics from my opponent as they fire off the move just before I get to my Body Slam, but the Moonblast does not KO. Greedent will not be denied, firing off the Body Slam and grabbing the shield from the opponent. Greedent dies with the Body Slam, which is very unfortunate. In comes the Tentacruel, and Tentacruel is going to resist everything Tapu throws. Tapu goes for the Surf, Tentacruel gets the farm down. I'm expecting them to throw, so I switch into the Guzzlord and catch what should hopefully be a Thunder Punch or a Brutal Swing, and it is the Brutal Swing. That is massive. In the back, opponent has their own Tentacruel, and now this will be interesting. Crunch, 30% chance to debuff defense, versus Scald, 50% chance to lower my attack. I get the debuff, and that is very nice. My opponent just going to be going for the Scald here. I will respect it with a shield. My opponent does not get the debuff, so the RNG is in my favor. I'm now going to be firing off the Dragon Claw. Dragon Claw is going to be shielded up by my opponent. Switch clocks are misaligned, so I'm going to be able to preserve the Guzzlord, and then I'm going to go for an aggressive play. Send in the Tentacruel. Tentacruel gets the full Poison Jab farm down. That is massive. Back in comes the Ampharos. And in these shields down situations, the extra damage from the Scald helps so much, getting them deep into the red. They can fire off the last second charge move, but it's XL Tentacruel. It's not going to care, shrugging off the Brutal Swing and taking the win. We've got a bit of a tricky lead in the next match, Tentacruel into Shadow Dragonite. This is a battle of bulk versus raw damage output. Dragonite incredibly oppressive, especially when Shadow with the Dragon Breath Dragon Claw combination, whereas Tentacruel is extremely bulky. I have Blizzard, but I'm just going straight for the Scald here, fishing for a potential debuff. Opponent commits the shield, I get the debuff, I decide to switch out here in case my opponent has a counter user in the back. I probably should have stayed in after getting the debuff, as a Body Slam is not going to be enough to KO, and they can make a superpower. So again, first couple battles playing with this team, there's going to be a couple mistakes. However, we are able to bait out the counter user. In comes Poliwrath, so on the good side, we're able to bait it out, and Tentacruel absolutely destroys Poliwrath. Which is the nice thing, is basically the two big meta additions are of course going to be the Poliwrath and the Talonflame, and Tentacruel just shuts them both down. They can't really do much of anything. Firing off the Body Slam, I'm going to look to farm up, bank a Body Slam, switch into the Tentacruel as the switch timers are misaligned here. So Poliwrath is now going to be stuck where its energy is completely useless. I'm farming up and I'm going for the Scald right away. Scald is debuffed due to the Icy Wind from the Poliwrath, but again, it's damage. And we get the 50% chance to lower their attack. I don't get the debuff. They're going to be firing off the Scald here. Scald is going to get me low. It's a battle. Poison Jab versus counter, and I live on 1 HP. Unfortunately, just short of the move. I send in Guzzlord. Guzzlord KOs the Dragonite. In the back, it's Tentacruel. I'm farming up, going for the crunch. Unfortunately, the game lags and forces an overtap, so I end up throwing on alignment. I'm going to need a catch of a Blizzard to win. I throw 2. Wait a turn and get the catch onto the Greedent. Tried to go for the CMP sack swap, but Greedent does lose CMP. But either way, we should be in the driver's seat of this match now. Oh my goodness, that catch completely saved us. Dragon Claw will be shielded up. I make it to Dragon Claw number 2, and this is going to be game over for the Tentacruel. And we're seeing a lot of Tentacruels from the opponents, and that is not by accident. Tentacruel is an absolute force to be reckoned with. Moving into the next match, picking up a slightly negative lead, Tentacruel into Giratina. I'm going to farm up some energy here and then look to save switch into the Greedent. Opponent throws energy, and that's perfectly fine by me. The worst it can be is a Dragon Claw. They're going to fire off the Dragon Claw. I continue to farm up. Opponent now going to send in their own Greedent. So we've got the Battle of the Squirrels. I'm firing off the Body Slam here. I have taken quite a bit of damage. The only way that I can hope to flip this is with a Crunch debuff. So I'm going to fire off the Crunch into the Greedent. And it works. I get the 30% debuff. And suddenly, I might be able to make a play for switch or for shield advantage due to the fact that my opponent's defense is now debuffed. And I think I should be able to get a KO with back-to-back Body Slams. I'm going for Body Slam number 1. That will connect. Opponent firing off energy. But their Body Slam is not going to KO, whereas mine definitely will. I go for the Body Slam. Looks like that is a CMP tie, and my Greedent is able to win it. Body Slam is going to get the knockout, and my opponent, are they going to be sending back in the Giratina here to look for a farm down? Yes, Giratina looking for the farm down. Greedent makes it to the Crunch, but the opponent makes a very nice catch as they catch the Crunch onto Registeel. Now, Registeel is a bit of an awkward Pokemon for this team to deal with, but I have energy on Tentacruel, so I can send the Tenta, spam out these Scalds, and start chipping away at the Registeel's health and fish for debuffs. Now, this might be due to the fact that I'm running a team that has 3 charge moves, Crunch on the back 2 Mons, and Scald on the Tentacruel, that have a percentage chance to get a debuff, but it definitely felt like, at least in these practice battles, that the Ultra League is going to have a lot more RNG elements than previous rotations. Whereas like in previous rotations, like Breaking Swipe was like a guaranteed debuff, now it's a 50% chance. And I'm not a massive fan of when games can just come down to good RNG versus bad RNG. I would rather prefer it that games more came down to a skill expression. My opponent is not going to let me make it to a Blizzard here. If I got close, they could just fire off a move, so I decided to go for the Scald just to get some chip, fish for a debuff. I get the debuff, and now I can send in the Guzzlord. Dragon Claw is super effective damage, but Guzzlord has some pretty good bulk, and they are debuffed. They're firing off another move. Again, I'm not too worried about it as the Guzzlord. So I'm just going to let that through, and Guzzlord is going to be able to get the full Dragon Tail farm down and take the game. Hopping into the next match, picking up a great lead, Tentacruel into Verizion. Opponent save switches into Shadow Piloswine, and what spice from the opponent. Shadow Piloswine is a massively expensive investment, but a Pokemon that is a bit awkward for this team to deal with. Scald grabs a shield. Unfortunately, I do not get the attack drop, and I'm going to send in the Greedent. Shadow Avalanche does a ton of damage. 2 Body Slams are not going to be enough to KO here, so I am going to fire off the Crunch. Crunch is going to connect, and I do get the defense drop. So I didn't get the attack drop from Scald, but I do get the defense drop. I'm going to be shielding up the Avalanche, and here what I should have done was just go for the Body Slam right away, but I was slightly worried that it wouldn't KO. I accidentally overfarmed too much, and I play to a CMP tie that I do not win. Really, really unfortunate play there. I'm now going to fire off the Body Slam. It does get the KO, and in comes Verizion. Verizion farming up energy, but the energy isn't particularly useful going up against the Tentacruel. I'm firing off the Body Slam. Body Slam is going to connect. I continue to farm up. I'm only making it to one more move, so I figure may as well test my luck and go for a Crunch debuff. I was getting crazy luck with the Crunch debuffs during these battles, and I get another one. What is this? I send in the Tentacruel. They're going to be firing off the Stone Edge. I'm expecting we're going to be seeing more Stone Edge Verizions just with how powerful Talonflame is. In the back, what a cool pick. My opponent has the anti-Talonflame tech. It's a Shadow Blastoise, and Shadow Ice Beam is going to do a lot of damage. Can Guzzlord hang on here? This is going to be close. Shadow Ice Beam, massive damage. Guzzlord able to withstand the damage and make it to the Crunch. I didn't think a Claw would quite KO as Blastoise has some big bulk, so I am able to get to the Crunch and get the KO. Back in comes the Verizion. Verizion farming up, and Verizion is firing off energy. But a Stone Edge, not going to KO from here. I'm going to be able to tank that as the Tentacruel, make it to the Scald, and Scald may be resisted. But again, another situation where having that little bit of extra damage is helpful, and we do secure the knockout onto Verizion. We see a very tough lead in the next match. Tentacruel into a Alolan Sandslash. I save switch into Gradient. Opponent is now going to counter switch into Verizion. And my opponent so far has 0 counter to Talonflame. If they saw Talonflame on the lead, they would just immediately lose, basically. So I think it's unlikely we're going to see a lot of teams like this, and that's part of why I did structure the team in the way that I did, was in previous seasons when Charizard was the Fire Flying type of choice, you could run Alolan Sandslash as your Charizard counter, because as long as you had shields, the Charizard, of course, its fast moving wing attack, the fast moves weren't really threatening. Whereas now that we have the Incinerate user as the Fire Flying type of choice, teams like these, unfortunately, are going to have a really tough time going up against Talon. Either way, I'm still going to try and make a play for switch here. I'm farming up, but I can't quite get there. They're firing off the Sacred Sword, and I'm just going to let this through. Sacred Sword is going to connect. I send in the Tentacruel. Opponent firing off some energy. I'm going to let this through. Verizion is running Leaf Blade as well, so yeah, they just completely lose to a Talonflame on the lead. In comes the Sandslash. I'm farming up, and I'm firing off the Scald, looking for a potential debuff. Scald will connect. I get the debuff. I'm farming up the switch into the Guzzlord, and I'm able to get the prediction correct and catch the debuff Drill Run onto the Guzzlord. They're farming up energy with the Sandslash. Sandslash gonna go for the Ice Punch. This is debuffed, so I am gonna let this through, as future Ice Punches would of course do more. In the back, my opponent has Cresselia. This will be a very, very difficult game to win, but I'm gonna try my best. Crunch will connect. I get the defense drop. At the very least, my luck with defense drops was insane during these battles. Oh my goodness. They're gonna fire off the Moonblast. My switch clock is coming up soon, but my opponent, now it's their turn to get the debuff. They get the 10% debuff from the Moonblast. I'm farming up with the Guzzlord, switching into the Tentacruel, and Tentacruel is going to be met with energy from the Cresselia. Cresselia goes for the Grass Knot. I'm farming up. Opponent makes it to another move. Here, honestly, I'm in a bit of an awkward spot. Ideally, I would love to leave this Cresselia at low health, farm down with the Guzzlord, and try and make it to a Crunch. So I'm going to undercharge the Scald, switch into the Guzzlord as I get KO'd, but unfortunately the Sandslash is able to outpace, and Ice Punch will secure the knockout. Hopping into the final match, leading Tentacruel into Golisopod. This is another pretty nice lead for the Tentacruel. Golisopod can put up a pretty nice fight here. They can go for debuffs with Liquidation and hit for neutral with Aerial Aces. They go for the Liquidation debuff, and they do not get it. My charge moves are walled here, but this is still a favorable matchup for the Tentacruel. I fire off the Scald, I get the attack debuff, and again, that 50% debuff chance on Tentacruel is just brutally, brutally oppressive on a Pokemon as tanky as this. Opponent sends in the Shadow Swampert. Honestly, I don't feel like I played this endgame or this mid-game particularly well. I'm going to fire off the Crunch. Crunch is going to be shielded up. I get another debuff, and here I should probably just shield, but I was expecting a bait, so I no shield. It's the Earthquake. I can survive it, but now I'm in an awkward position where I kind of do want switch advantage and the energy that I do have on the Guzzlord, so I am going to go for a double shield farm down that involves shielding 2 resisted moves on the Guzzlord. That's extremely unfortunate. A lot of Shadow Swamperts that I'd played before had baited in that scenario, and in the back, oh goodness, it's an Obstagoon. This is going to be a bit tricky. Dragon Claw is going to connect. I switch back into the Tentacruel. Let's flip that coin. 50-50. Scald connects. We get the debuff, and now they're going to have a really difficult time getting rid of Tentacruel from the field of play. Night Slash connects. That's not going to cut it. In comes the Golisopod. Golisopod unable to get to the farm down as I fire off the Scald. Scald will be shielded. We get another debuff, and that forces a simultaneous KO. In comes the Obstagoon. The Obstagoon is invisible for some reason. Okay, alright. I'm going to fire off the Body Slam with the green, and I get the combo play with the Dragon Claw from the Guzzlord. Dragon Claw KOs invisible Obstagoon, and we take the game. The buff to Scald has turned Tentacruel from a very strong contender into an absolute beast in the Open Ultra League. There are a couple things that Tentacruel isn't a big fan of seeing. I would say the primary one is probably Jellicent, and then some of the steel types can get a bit uncomfortable. So that's why in the back, I would recommend if you're running Tentacruel, have some very nice checks to stuff like Jellicent in the back, so that way if you do run into those negative leads, then you'll have stuff that you'll be able to switch into and still play around it despite the negative lead. But again, the 50-50 coin flip Scald debuff on a Pokemon as bulky as XL Tentacruel is horrifyingly strong. This could end up being a bit of a long week, I'll be honest. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.